Hey everybody, it is Colin Nitro for Nitromaniac TV's wrestling channel, and this is my take on the Money in the Bank pay-per-view, which concluded on May 19th. Something about that day in WWE lore. Something about that. Anyway, May 19th, 2019, from Hartford's XL Center in Hartford, Connecticut. And this is just my thoughts on the card in general. I ended up watching the card about a day or so after it aired, just on the PVR function on the WWE network. So I watched that, and then I watched Raw soon thereafter. So this will be kind of an amalgamation of everything from Money in the Bank and Raw, if that makes sense. Did not get a chance to watch the pre-show, but I see in the results that the Usos defeated Daniel Bryan and Rowan in the pre-show. Wow. Daniel Bryan, how the mighty have fallen from one of the big advertised matches at WrestleMania, maybe not the main event spot, but to the pre-show. Oh boy. Anyway, like I said, I really hope everything's cool with Bryan right now. The women's Money in the Bank ladder match was the first match that we've seen on the card, and its placement on the card, in hindsight, looking at the pay-per-view, was actually really useful because Bayley won the Money in the Bank ladder match, and she would be involved later on in the night in the women's championship scenarios that played out. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But the Money in the Bank ladder match itself for the women, I thought flowed very nicely. It says officially the time here was 13:50. It felt at times a little longer than that, but I thought that Mandy Rose actually was a standout for two reasons in that match. I thought that some of the offense that she had created, like the kind of the running knee trigger up the ladder in the corner, was very unique and kind of an eye-opener, kind of an ooh-ah type moment. And the spot that she did with Carmella with the ankle, where Carmella came back and effectively eliminated Mandy Rose from contention later on in the match, was well done as well, planting the seeds for a potential feud going on down the line between Carmella and Mandy Rose on SmackDown. So we have that to look forward to. Bayley winning the Money in the Bank contract, really good. And like I said, this was not the end of Bayley for this night. More to come later in the video. Second match on the pay-per-view, third match overall, Rey Mysterio defeated Samoa Joe for the U.S. title in about a minute 40. That being a reverse result of what they did at WrestleMania, where Samoa Joe squashed Rey Mysterio in about the same amount of time. But we found out the next night on Raw that Rey Mysterio suffered a separated shoulder in the match against Samoa Joe and has to forfeit the U.S. title. We're not sure now. There is talk on the rumor sheets and that stuff that WWE may just retire the U.S. Championship next week, and that might be the big news. We're going to find out anyway what happens with the U.S. title next week, if there's going to be a match at Super Showdown between potentially Samoa Joe and somebody for the U.S. Championship. Is there talk of WWE just completely suspending the U.S. title indefinitely? Of course, with the 24/7 Championship being introduced on Raw on Monday, that might be the push now for the mid-card, is that 24/7 Championship, which is kind of Looney Tunes, if you ask me. This is a little strange. It's the full AEW effect now grasping hold, and I think Vince is panicking big time with a lot of these decisions. But if the United States Championship does go by the wayside, it will be sad, as it is the only real living lineage that's been almost uninterrupted since WWE bought WCW back in 2001. That harkens back to WCW, as the United States Championship in WCW was the workers' belt. That was the mid-card championship in WCW, and that's where you had to have a successful run as a U.S. champion before even being considered to be the world champion in WCW back in the day. So now it's kind of a sad deal if that's the case, if that's where they go. But anyway, steel cage match, Shane McMahon versus The Miz, and Shane McMahon wins by slipping out of his shirt on the edge of the cage when he was dangling there, and The Miz had got him. by the shirt and was kind of just holding them up. And of course, WWE rules, kind of the weird rules that WWE has for cage matches. You can win by escaping the cage. Yes, that's always been kind of the trope with WWE, is that I don't think no other federation really exercises those rules, but WWE does, and it's basically it had the potential of being a really awesome kind of babyface beats down the cocky heel type match, but the ending of it is kind of tells me that they're going to extend this program a little bit longer than need be with this. I mean, we saw on Raw the next night that Miz was kind of thrown into a feud with Drew McIntyre because McIntyre is doing bidding on McMahon's behalf now. So I guess McMahon and Miz will be tabled till later this year, and Miz will be forgotten on the upper mid card with McIntyre for a little bit. So, and McMahon can go back to SmackDown and being the heel benevolent general manager of SmackDown or president, or whatever the role is now over on SmackDown, which he is, authority figure. And not so much benevolent as he is ultra violent, I guess. Dark horse match of the night for me was the Cruiserweight title match, and the Cruiserweight title has really picked up steam since Mania weekend, the match on 205 Live on that Tuesday between Tony Nese, the current champion, and Buddy Murphy. This one was Tony Nese versus Arya Davari, who was being renamed on the internet as Arya Ferrari due to the car that he drove out in, a la Eddie Guerrero back in the day, and a little bit of Alberto Del Rio. WWE really playing that Persian playboy stereotype up with Davari, which means that they will book him for Super Showdown, and he will probably be a mega heel over there in Saudi Arabia. Match itself was really good. It was a solid 9:25 or so just under 10 minutes, and Tony Nese winning with the running Nese in the corner to retain a Cruiserweight Championship. And, they keep the belt on Nese, and he keeps cranking out these great matches with guys. It does nothing but elevate the product. So, really looking forward to seeing who Nese's next challenger is, building up. That they'll use him on the Saudi Supercards, the Super Showdown, and going forward into the summer months. I expect him to hold that Cruiserweight title through SummerSlam. I think that might be where the next title change for the Cruiserweight title will probably be SummerSlam. So then came the storyline involving Becky 2 belts. Becky Lynch defending both her Raw and SmackDown Women's Championships. She successfully defended the Raw Championship against Lacey Evans, defeating Lacey Evans by the disarmor submission at about 8:40 or so, it says here on my list. So it was a really decent, really back and forth match. Lacey has gone away, I think, from the go away heat, and now is getting like the legit heel heat out there from the crowd, which is great. She's really evolving as an in-ring performer too. I think that was her best match to date in WWE, was the one on Sunday. She was fairly solid in that match. So kudos to the Performance Center staff and everything, into all the training and the hard work, as well as Lacey Evans has been doing. The character is over as a heel right now, and they just keep, as we've seen the next night on Raw on Monday, just keep heaping it on for sure. I think that she could be maybe as big as a heel in the women's division as Charlotte Flair is over on SmackDown. And, I wouldn't even mind seeing a switch of brands eventually between Lacey Evans and Charlotte Flair. And I also wouldn't mind as well seeing Lacey Evans and Charlotte Flair team up, because working in tandem, as we've seen the past couple of weeks, they could be a really formidable WWE Women's World Tag Team Champs, big time, holding on to those belts, and probably add a lot of credibility to those belts too. Not that there isn't now, but just they're building that brand and that title up, and I think that tandem could probably do a lot of it, or do a lot for it, I should say. That led to the second match, where Charlotte Flair just kind of stormed right out after the Becky Lynch, Lacey Evans match concluded, not giving Becky any time to rest. And Charlotte Flair defeating Becky Lynch with Lacey Evans' interference in about 6 minutes and 15 seconds. So Charlotte Flair, we thought, was the SmackDown Women's Championship. But hold up, wait a minute. As the beatdown of Becky Lynch continued in the ring, out came Bayley, who took out both Lacey Evans and Charlotte Flair. Had Charlotte Flair down in the corner, and then realized, oh cool, I just won this contract earlier in the night, I'm gonna cash this in now, okay thanks, bye. Does that, and ends up being the SmackDown Women's Champion. Really cool celebration, biggest pop of the night for sure, well deserved. And yeah, it's kind of, you kind of wonder if this was supposed to be the arc for Sasha Banks after January, but just due to the, I guess, reported outburst that was out there in the dressing room and that stuff, with Banks losing the women's tag belts at WrestleMania with Bayley, you almost wonder if that was, automatically, that storyline automatically shifted over to Bayley. And hey, Bayley is SmackDown Women's Champion, pretty cool. She is the first Grand Slam Women's Champion in WWE, having held the Raw Women's title, SmackDown Women's title, and of course the Women's Tag belts now. So that's a big deal for sure, and another tip or another feather in the cap of the WWE NXT horsewomen. So if they are still, it might be smoldered a little. Try again. It might be smoldered a little bit, but I think that they still are pursuing that horsewomen versus horsewomen, NXT versus MMA horsewomen feud. It may be reduced now to 6 instead of 8 because of Rousey's sabbatical that she's taking, and now the questionable future pretty much of Sasha Banks. But you could still have fun with Baszler, Jessamine Duke, and Marina Shafir versus Bayley, Becky, and Charlotte, like big time. I think that would be still a very interesting feud. And of course, all these War Games matches that they've been doing in NXT have involved 6-man units. So I think it would only be a natural leading up to November to have the first ever women's War Games match on the Survivor Series card between those two entities. But remains to be seen. We'll see what happens. And of course, with that means that there will be no more Money in the Bank cash-ins on the women's side until next year's Money in the Bank match. So they've played that card in the women's division. There's no Money in the Bank holder anymore, and so they're working without a net, pretty much. If you can call the Money in the Bank holder a safety net, in case they get in a situation with a champion that isn't drawing or is kind of creating an adverse effect in the ratings and such. Up next, Roman Reigns is walking to the ring, gets ambushed by Elias, who smashes his acoustic guitar and busts out a wicked electric to run down the crowd in Hartford. And on his way out the building, all of a sudden gets jumped by Roman Reigns. And in 10 seconds, it is Roman Reigns winning. I actually like this. I thought that this was actually outside the box. It kind of screams a little Bruce Pritchard in my book. So I think he might have had a hand in this. And you know what? It was entertaining. It was a solid segment. It was a kind of an original way to put Roman over, kind of a fresh way to put him over for sure. And the live crowd actually dug it. They thought it was really good. I'm not sure what it had translated online, obviously, and that stuff in the Twitterverse, but it's one of those things. You hope that Roman's health is 100%, and that's not the reason why the creative went the way it did. But I think, honestly, they were trying something outside the box, and it kind of sort of worked. So now, with the heel Shane McMahon on SmackDown, it appears the path is clear for Roman Reigns to go after Shane McMahon. But after last night, I think we might be set up even for a Roman-Miz feud now that we got the wild cards happening. Even though that they were kind of teamed up with each other at one point in Raw last night, I think that we might end up seeing maybe somewhere down the line both parties just can't wait to get their hands on Shane McMahon enough that they have to go after each other one-on-one. And that'd be really interesting. That's kind of a neat dynamic for sure. The two title matches for the two big belts in WWE. First, the WWE Universal Championship, the big red belt on Raw. Seth Rollins retaining the championship over AJ Styles. It was match of the night. It was a great back and forth encounter. Only to be pretty much followed by the Davari Cruiserweight title match, which was really good, and the match that follows this one as well, the WWE Championship between Kofi Kingston and Kevin Owens, which as well was a very decent match. It was kind of harkening back. That last one between Kingston and Owens kind of reminded me of the Guerrero Angle match from WrestleMania 20, with Angle kind of playing the power heel in that one, and Guerrero kind of being the face, kind of shifty, sneaky champion that has to kind of bend the rules a little bit to win, and that's exactly what Kofi did in this match against Kevin. So again, Kevin kind of playing the power heel role, the bully role, and Kingston kind of bending the rules a little bit to retain, whereas Rollins and Styles was a great straight up pro wrestling, almost New Japan style Puro Rezu type contest. It wasn't so much sports entertainment as it was just a straight up wrestling match. First time in 15 years that those guys had met on a card that's even bigger than probably the independent cards that they were meeting back then on. And hey, it was like watching wrestling in a mirror, from back and forth from each other. So Rollins retains the Universal title, Kingston retains the WWE title, and that leads to Money in the Bank, where all hell breaks loose. And the men's Money in the Bank match, Brock Lesnar winning the Money in the Bank contract. There was a skit earlier on in the pay-per-view where Sami Zayn, who had won the spot from Braun Strowman the previous week on Raw for the Money in the Bank match, was found hanging in the dressing room. Triple H quickly tracked down Braun Strowman, who had been looking for Sami Zayn all night, and said, "You found him, you did your damage, get out of here." Whereas Braun was like, "I didn't find him. Where did you guys find him? I didn't touch him." And yeah, Braun was right. He didn't touch him, because it was Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman, storyline wise, sneaking into the arena in Hartford and, man, just crashing the Money in the Bank match, pretty much grabbing a spot and hijacking the Money in the Bank contract. It certainly adds an interesting dynamic. I personally like the dynamic of having Brock Lesnar out there as the Money in the Bank winner against two people who I guess you can perceive as, I don't want to say weak champions, but in the two one-on-one meetings with Lesnar, the only one of the two champions that has a victory over Lesnar is Rollins, of course, with WrestleMania. Kofi did meet Lesnar a few years ago on a network special from Japan back in 2015 in a one-on-one contest, and that match actually was really entertaining, so I wouldn't mind them going at it again. However, Kofi was on the losing side, and that was back when the New Day was full heel and Lesnar was 2015-ish, kind of floating between babyface and heel, kind of a real tweener. This is coming off of the Seth Rollins cash-in at Mania, so it's a thing where these guys are all kind of intertwined in the past few years, so it's kind of going to be a really interesting summer for sure. I think you have Lesnar hold on to the Money in the Bank contract until maybe way after SummerSlam and Survivor Series. I almost would have him go almost until Mania next year with the contract and just have that thread up there. You don't want it to go overly long, because then it's kind of docile, like, okay, he's never going to cash in, but with it's kind of the perfect title with Lesnar's part-time status. Even though he says he's going to show up again next week on Raw, I think that he's going to show up on Raw for a few weeks and kind of taunt some people around and everything. And then something might happen where he gets chased from both Raw and SmackDown for a while, and then he'll show up at as the fans would consider it, an inopportune time, but for him, an opportune time. And that will be my prediction with how that goes. But very interesting. A very weird, a very interesting show. I will give the Money in the Bank 2019 a 6.5 out of 10. I think that it left more questions than answers. I think WWE as of late has been feeling the pressure from AEW, and that's why a lot of these booking decisions are kind of head scratchers. And now it is up to All Elite Wrestling this coming weekend to play their card and see how the other shoe drops in Vegas at the MGM Grand for Double or Nothing. And I will have my take on that and maybe a few other things too going on and around the Vegas area that weekend, live from here at the Nitromaniac TV home base. I'm not flying out there or anything. I'm just sticking at home and checking this out for sure this time. Saving a little extra bucks this time around. So anyways, I'm Kellen Nitro. Later days. Happy wrestling watching. And we will see you next time on Nitromaniac TV's wrestling channel. Like, subscribe, share the video around. And we'll catch you later. Peace.